Here. Vice Chairman George Chambers.
Here.
Commissioner Montrell Linden.
Here.
Commissioner Clint Chance.
Here.
Commissioner Tommy Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Steve Fuller.
Here.
Commissioner Ernie Reynolds.
Here.
I'm now going to ask Commissioner McClendon to offer our invocation, and then Commissioner Reynolds will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Father, we just thank you right now for this opportunity to serve you, to serve this community. We pray for your wisdom and knowledge in all that we do and all the votes that we make. We're doing our best to take care of this community and to see to its needs. And we just ask you to guide us and guide our decisions. And Father, we just thank you for your many blessings. And we pray for the unrest in our nation right now. We just pray that you would guide us to peaceful resolutions. Continue to teach us that we are all one, we're all your children, and that we should treat each other with that respect. Father, we give you honor and praise in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is item 5, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion with a hand raise and a second with a hand raise to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Okay, so I have Commissioner Chance, the motion to approve, and a second with Commissioner Reynolds. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you. I guess we need to be verbal too, so that the public can hear, so that did pass unanimously. Okay, now, item 6 is approval of the minutes. Since we can only approve the minutes of regularly scheduled meetings, not a special call meeting, we actually have several of them. So we have 6.1 work session meetings, February 27, 2020. 6.2 commission meeting minutes, March 3rd, 2020. 6.3 the emergency special call meeting minutes, March 23rd, 2020. 6.4 the emergency special call meeting of April 3rd, 2020. And 6.5 the emergency special call meeting of April 15th, 2020. And there again, do I have a motion to the second with a hand raise? Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Chambers and a second by Commissioner Fuller. Is there any discussion on those 5 minutes? Okay, seeing and hearing none, if you will raise your hand in favor and also say aye.
Aye.
Okay, not seeing that was unanimous, I will ask for opposed. At this time is public comments, and public comments are just that, an opportunity for the public to address the commission with any issues or concerns they may have. This is not a time for the board to comment, nor will the board take any action. From the list that was back when you first came in, there was no one that signed up, but is there anyone now who would like to come and address the Board of Commissioners? I'll ask again, does anybody would like to come? Okay, thank you. We will then move on to the financial session. I'm going to call on the County Finance Director, Alicia Searcy, for 8.1. It is the financial recap for April of 2020.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be looking at April 2020 financials, and I'm just going to give a brief overview, and if you have any specific questions, we can talk about that. Our taxes collected through the end of April were $43,506,807, and that's 99.3% of the budget. Our total revenue, which includes tax
$52,202,077, and that's 97.88% of our budget. So we're getting real close in April to making our budget, and I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of a preview into May. At the end of May, we've actually exceeded our budget as far as revenue is concerned. So that's very encouraging that we've made our revenue budget at the end of May. Back to April, our total expenses were $43,611,842. That's 81.77% of our budget. That left us with a fund balance of $22,729,834, and that fund balance is $2,319,000 over the April 2019 fund balance. Our general fund cash is up about $4 million over the April 2019 general cash balance. So all in all, April was a little slower. We knew that COVID-19 was going to affect our revenues. We had recreation and parks were closed during that time period. We had started to conserve expenses and cut back on spending. All of that will show even greater as we move into May. But I think we did a pretty good job of managing during that downtime. All of the departments are pretty much, well, there's a couple of exceptions that I think we'll have to do a budget amendment on as far as the departmental budgets. And most of those amendments are related to accounting changes or things that are kind of out of our those and you can see those by vendor, so you can see who we've been spending money with. So that's the conclusion of the financial summary. Anyone has any questions? From a revenue standpoint, expense standpoint, or okay. Last year we had met 96.55% of our budget as far as revenue was concerned, and our revenue to date was $48,577,000 compared to this year, which is $52,202,000. So we're not quite $4 million ahead of last year as far as revenue is concerned. And then as far as expenses, last year we were at $39,769,927. This year we're at $43,611,842. Last year we were at 79% of budget, and this year we're almost at 82% of budget as far as expenditures. So we have spent a little bit more as a percentage of our budget this year. If we had spent our budget in equal increments, we would be at about 83% at the end of April. So our expenses are still trending pretty well compared to our budget.
This doesn't look really great, just quick arithmetic, it's like about 7% over last year.
7% on,
Oh,
no, we're actually ahead of last year as far as, yes, we're at 52,202,000, and last year we were at 48,577,000. It's okay, I know we're talking across the room here.
My only comment on this, do I need to move this? Okay. My only comment on this is just what we discussed during the work session, and that there is concern in the community about, the COVID and all that, and that I think we just need to assure the public that we are closely monitoring this, and that especially that figure of revenue over expenses, that is going down, which is typical for this time of year because we've collected the cash and now we're using it. But just that we monitor that, because we saw from last month to the end of the next month, we used a little more than we anticipated, so that at the end of this fiscal year, we might end up with not a $5 million excess, but something less than that. So we just need to monitor that very closely, and I feel let the public know that we're very astute at monitoring that and making quick decisions to adjust.
Well, obviously, the May numbers are not completed at this point, but the preliminary numbers I think, will reflect exactly what you're saying, because we really tightened down on expenses and tried to conserve as much cash as we could and continue to pay our employees and not have to furlough anyone other than temporary part-time people. So I think once we see May's numbers, that'll support what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no further questions for Alicia, we'll move to item 8.2, consideration of a resolution for adopting the county's FY 2021 budgets. I'd like Ms. Cersei to go over the highlights of the budget for us once again.
Okay, in front of you, you have the resolution, and right at the bottom of the first page is kind of the start of the highlights, where we talk about the positions or the changes in positions. And so what we did is we funded 5 full-time positions for the Sheriff's Department, and these positions were approved back in 2012, 2014, and 2018. We also funded a full-time position for the Correctional Institute. We funded a full-time position in the Codes Enforcement Department. We've got 2 additional full-time positions and 1 part-time position in probate court for the mental health program that will be funded by the SAMHSA grant. And then we're funding an additional 13 full-time firefighters for Station 17 and 18, and 1 additional part-time person in the solid waste that will only be used as needed, kind of as a fill-in for vacations and time off is what that position's meant to do. We do have some increases in revenue and some decreases in revenue. We're projecting an increase in property tax revenue of $562,000, and that relates to new construction, where property values would be, where you may have a piece of raw land that now has a building constructed on it. That's about what we see on average during the year. I am projecting a increase in auto tax of $890,000. Now, that's the projected budget for FY20 for auto tax is $4,350,000. Our projected income for FY 2020 is $5,268,000. So even though there's an increase in the budgeted amount, the budget compared to actual is budgeted at about $918,000 less than what we will actually receive this year, which is about a 17% decrease. So there is an increase in the budgeted number, but compared to what we think we'll get at our actual, we're projecting a 17% decrease because of slower car sales for COVID. Our local insurance premium tax has an increase of $110,000 budgeted. That is in line with the actual amount that was received for FY 2020. We're budgeting an $165,000 increase in local energy excise tax. That's an accounting change where we're increasing revenue for the payments that we give to the cities, and then we'll also recognize that expense in the expense part of the budget. We've got a $491,800 increase in grants. That is the SAMHSA grant and the SAFER grant for the fire department. We show a $325,000 increase in intergovernmental revenue. That's also an accounting change of how we're recognizing revenue and recognizing the expense. We're showing a $125,000 increase from the City of Carrollton for reimbursement in the solicitor and state court public defender. That money is actually, we've been receiving that money during 2020, but we're not sure at the 2020 budget whether we were going to receive it or not. So it was not included in the 2020 budget. So we've included that now. We're showing an increase in rent of $80,800. That's for the DFAX building. Once it's completed, the renovations there are completed, their rent will go up according to the lease agreement. And then we're showing an increase in charges for services of $20,500. And that's related to the additional money we'll receive from the City of Carrollton for a correctional officer that we've had in place through most of this year, but had not had in place the prior year. And the warden feels like we'll be able to continue to service the City of Carrollton with that additional CO. Now, I am showing a decrease in local option sales tax according to the budget of $150,000 compared to what we project our actual to be. That's about a 6% decrease. So the decrease from actual to 2021 budget is going to be about $700,000, which is 6%. Also related to COVID, we feel like that's about where we'll be based on studies that have come out. Our May sales tax was down about 7%, so I thought that 7% in May, a 7% decrease in May wasn't too bad based on the fact that we were in the middle of the crisis. So hopefully we will see sales tax beyond where we have it budgeted, but I feel based on what I've seen so far that we're pretty good as far as that's concerned. I've also decreased commissions because of the reduction in the amount of auto tax that we'll collect. we've seen a reduction in beer and wine tax for last year, a slight reduction in occupational tax. I've reduced the amount of fees at the rec department just based on COVID and CDC requirements, and we're not real sure how parents are going to react or respond to putting their children back in a rec program. So that was a conservative move to hopefully anticipate if there was a pullback there. Also a reduction in fine fees and forfeitures of about $63,900, and that's related to just the slowdown in the court system in being able to process cases, also related to COVID. I've reduced our interest income by $36,200. The banks have reduced rates. If those adjust back up, I will be speaking with our bankers to get those reinstated to the levels that they were before. But that's hard to say what's going to happen there. And then we've just got a reduction in miscellaneous income of $25,600. So the net revenue increase is $2,236,500. We had $490,000 in accounting changes. We had $125,000 from the city of Carrollton on the solicitor, and then $593,000 in new grants. So that's $1,208,000 in new revenue just from accounting changes and grants. And then we have tax and other related new revenue of about $1,028,500. So that's a summary of the revenue portion of the budget. On the expense side, a large portion of our increase was for personnel cost. As I stated, we've added, or in the budget we have 13 firefighters that will be added if we receive that SAFER grant. We're funding 5 sheriff's deputies. We're funding 1 captain in the Correctional Institute, 1 building inspector, 3 mental health in the mental health program. We've increased the overtime for the sheriff. We've increased overtime for fire. We had an increase in our health insurance and a bump up in our workers' comp. So that's everything that's related to that $1,004,000. That's across several different departments. Specifically in our general government area, we had the increase in the excise tax to the cities of $226,000. We had expenses related to Munis, which is our financial and human resource accounting program, maintenance fees of $105,000. We've got an increase in election fees of $55,000 for supplies and things that they will need for the new voting machines. Our general liability insurance went up about $95,000, and then we had a reduction in our contingency and the loss of the operations manager that totals about $230,000, which gives us about a $250,000 increase in general government. In judicial, in state court, we added the $25,000 that came from the city of Carrollton for a public defender. The solicitor's office got an assistant with money offset from the city of Carrollton of about $32,000. The probate court had an increase for that mental health program of $282,000, which is offset with the SAMHSA grant. And then we increased the juvenile court budget by $27,000 for indigent representation. Again, in public safety, Sheriff's Department, we had a $571,000 increase. Most of that related to the funding of the 5 deputies, the increase in the health coverage. We also increased their overtime by $50,000, increased their telephone by $12,000, increased medical services for for people detained at the jail by 23,800. And then for the CI, we had the increase for the captain and insurance, and increase for meals. It was actually 4 cents per meal, but it came up to $35,000 total, for about $77,000 there. And then the fire department, most of that was related to personnel. It was a total of $452,000 increase, with the personnel at $381,000, and then we had training, maintenance, and supplies at $71,000. In animal services, we had an increase of $63,000. $13,000 is related to personnel, and $50,000 is for the Petco grant, that we'll be receiving the grant from Petco, and then the increase in expenses where that money will be spent out. In Public Works, we had an increase for corrections transition service tech, $40,000, and accounting changes related to how we handle putting in pipes and doing work for municipalities, which is going to increase costs by about $136,000, but we also had the intergovernmental increase on the revenue side to offset that. And then we've got an increase from GFL on our solid waste transport of about $101,000. Codes enforcement, we're funding that building inspector. We had some extra salary money, so we're only having to increase salaries by about $20,000 to fully fund that. And then we've got an increase in our debt service of $46,000 on the DFAX lease purchase. So that's a summary of the changes in our budget. I know we've spent quite a bit of time talking about it, and I really appreciate all the input and all the help from everybody. It takes a lot to put this together, and having insight from each of you has been very important in getting that done.
Okay, so 8.2, FY 2021 budget resolution. Consideration of a resolution providing for the appropriations and expenditures of funds for the government of Carroll County, Georgia, for the county fiscal year 2021, beginning July 1st, 2020, and ending June 30th, 2021, providing for the operations of county departments, boards, agencies, elected offices, and other governmental activities, to provide for the level of personnel authorized for various departments and agencies, to provide for capital improvements as budgeted for the county, and to provide an effective date and for other purposes. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second. Please raise your hand with the motion and the second. Okay, so I'll take Commissioner Chance as a motion to approve, and Commissioner McClendon as a second to approve. At this time, I will open it up for discussions or any further questions to the Finance Director.
Madam Chair, I'd like to, in this motion, that we approve the FY 2021 budget with the following budget amendments, that the general admin and tax commissioner's office, that we would increase the salaries line item by $10,000. To offset that, proposing the commissioner's office to reduce temporary labor by $4,000. In the general admin and tax assessor's office, reduce office supplies and expenses by $2,000. And the contingency to utilize and reduce that line item by $4,000. And then that legal grant amount total proposed for that FY 2021 budget offset.
So are you making a amendment motion?
Yes, I'm sorry, if I raised my hand, yes, I did not spell that
Okay.
out.
So we have a motion for an amendment, correct?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second to that amendment? Okay, so we have an amendment motion by Commissioner Chance and a second by Commissioner Lee, and I will open that up for discussion.
I'd like to explain the proposal that I made. Also, we had lengthy discussions about the tax commissioner's office and their before he came on the board to be a commissioner. And then in addition to that, I think he had spent some time with the clerk of court and so forth that was brought out in a previous meeting. So I believe by reducing that amount, it appears that possibly if there are some tweaks in operations moving forward, that amount may indeed not be needed at all. So I didn't feel like that was crippling that. And then obviously the contingency speaks for itself. It's something that if we feel that we need to take advantage of, that we can do that. The tax commissioner in her role is required to essentially collect taxes for us from the county standpoint. She's obviously not required to do so for the municipalities, but there has been an agreement. I think it's beneficial for the county that the tax commissioner's office does do that. We bring in additional revenue, well over 6 digits, that is beneficial to the county. And while moving forward, I do believe that if we want to continue to the tax commissioner to have access to funds that were requested, I think that definitely does need to be revisited in the contract moving forward. But I feel like under the special circumstances, the fact that it was in the budget last year, it had been basically a protocol of the tax commissioner having access to funds. I feel like this was a fair and balanced way to try to make good on this and understand moving forward that intergovernmental agreement, if there's any gray areas, that it would need to be completely spelled out moving forward. So that in a nutshell is how I arrived at the information that I've made.
Any other discussion?
I have a question. We make this amendment, tonight to go forward with the budget at this point, right? We don't have to come back and rewrite it and stuff, be again, vote, make the amendment here on the budget. Move on. That's what I'm hearing.
Correct. Yeah.
I would like to say something else about talking to folks about this. I think this whole thing came about because we were a little unclear about who got what. $9 the parcel, the way this is parcel up. I would like for us to sit down and hammer out and agree exactly how this money is going to $9 and 9 parcels. Exactly how this is going to go. Avery, I think you could write an agreement, we can all sit down and look at it, so this doesn't come up again.
If you're talking about the agreement with the tax commissioner in the city, it's their interest in you getting considered, so you have to look at that the particular to review that agreement after the city.
Okay, but now the city's involved in what, how the expenditures, how we divide it. So that's something we have to make a break with the tax commissioner. Is that right?
I guess what you're doing about the amendment is being proposed, y'all are deciding how to handle those funds.
But is that in perpetuity, or is that just for this budget year?
Just for this budget.
Yeah, I think what Steve's talking about
Toss
is,
it down the road, so that we don't run into this again. We do the next intergovernment, we do this next agreement. We know exactly where we're going to go. Tax commissioner's office is going to be 2 out of $9.
Yeah,
We will have $9 wherever we come up with, so we don't run up against this.
I think in the next one that Miss Vicki will be watching too, so she'll know what to be looking for if it's satisfactory or not. She don't have to sign it. So, that's at her discretion.
And I'd like to add something again to my amendment, and I want to echo, I appreciate Ms. Cersei and all the effort that she's put into this, and the chairman, and everyone has put a lot of time and effort into this. And I know sometimes when you get down to the nitty gritty and you're trying to make last minute changes, it's not a reflection on anyone or that anyone's not done their job. I think you all have done an excellent job. I feel like at the end of the day, though, in charge with governing and doing what's fair, I feel like that our tax commission, we have a lot of great departments, a lot of constitutional officers, But I feel like this is not necessarily about just giving something to a department because they want it. I think it's about trying to do right by what has technically been a gray area, as I view it. Those are my words. And I think, as we're saying, moving forward, we all understand, including the tax commissioner, that we will make sure we cover any gray areas in writing. But I think this is just about making good on something, trying to be fair in the moment.
I'd like to say that my experience as a district commissioner, and I know from most of y'all, the top 5 calls you make are to public works about roads. You call community development about codes. You call animal control about the dead animals on the side of the road. You call the attorneys, and you call finance. So I find the $4,000 cut to the finance department unacceptable. I will also say that I have no problem renegotiating for the next year's budget. When this contract is up in December, renegotiating and making sure it's very clear so when we sit here this time next year, we know where the money is going. But I think to cut any of these other departments is unacceptable. I also think that you have to be very cautious in the fact that we have service agreements with our cities. And every time we send public works out to do a project, one of the cities pays us, and I don't turn around and give them a bonus. When animal control goes out to pick up an animal in the city, I don't give them a bonus. So I want you to think long and hard. We have 600 employees, and I'm not saying these 10 aren't special, but there are 590 other employees, and the tradition has been to give a bonus in June to every single person when we have the funds. So that's all I'm going to say on that, and if there's anyone else that would like to speak up.
Have you approved any pay raises for any employees since you've taken office?
From who?
I'm asking, have you approved any pay raises for any employees?
Yes, I did for Public Works back last summer.
Have you notated that they will be excluded from receiving a bonus?
If you would like to make that into a motion.
No, ma'am, I'm not. I don't want to make it into a motion. I am going against your argument that you are highly offended. That what I'm saying is,
people who are not quite at the pay raise and at the request of certain department heads getting people to the pay raise they need to be at. So my thing to you is you can vote yes, you can vote no on this amendment. I'm just telling you at this point, you need to think long and hard, and there is an opportunity to fix this going forward. But to specifically pull out a few employees, I think is detrimental to the entire Carroll County workforce.
How is that different than the hazardous pay that we pulled out?
Mr. Lee, we did
Because
not
you
have to vote
decided
on that
to
hazard
initially.
pay. We already did this back in
I'm
April.
just asking, how's it different?
It was different because it was a
I don't
special
think so.
code.
I
Then
don't
you shouldn't
think
have voted for it.
Well,
we've also, it's my understanding, had other constitutional officers, once their budget has been approved, they have actually given raises to their employees, and I can't give specific examples, but it's my understanding that it exists. And then it's also my understanding they have not been excluded from bonuses. I understand exactly what you're saying as far as let's try to be fair moving forward, and I am behind you 100% in that. But I think what we're doing is we're saying this is only about bonuses and it's not fair, when the reality is, just like I brought up at the last work session, we have that going on in the county throughout the year. It just does not come before the board. So what I'm saying is, if we have the power to stop a constitutional officer from giving a raise to an employee and then stop them, and we're going to put them on a list that they will not be qualifying for a year-end bonus, or if we want to say that from the commission standpoint in your office, that anyone you give a raise to throughout the year, they will automatically be excluded from getting a year-end bonus, then I think we can look at a different scenario. But I think it's misleading to say just because this situation has come before the board, we're going to stop it when it's actually going on. And the reality is that I believe all of our departments and our constitutional officers are fair, and I believe that many of them try to do the best they can. But the reality is, Commissioner Bearden did not have to tell us what she was going to do with that. She could have stated that I need X in the postage, or I need it in another line item, and then we may have just approved it, and then she did it on her own. which is what some other constitutional officers may have done, not out of neglect, but just as they see fit, because the law allows them to do that. So I respect what you're saying. I just don't want us to, because this particular scenario came before the board, we're acting like it is being a disadvantage to other employees, when the reality is it is going on in areas that it just does not come before the Board of Commissioners.
Is there any further discussion? You have a specific question? Yes. Okay, yes. So, Tax Commissioner Vicki Beard, Commissioner Fuller has a question for you. If you will work on getting a microphone for her.
This microphone is going to mess with me. All the others are about the same except that one and this one. This one's just much louder. Thank you.
This may be, I just want to hear, just what are you planning on doing exactly? What's $10,000,
Okay. We had originally, we always put that money back in to put in postage and office supplies, but this year I had asked to put it into funds for giving my employees a bonus. We originally started off with talking about giving them a raise, and I told them I didn't think it was fair for, if they got a raise in the future, to have it on top of that money also. So I said if we just do it as a one-time bonus, then it would not affect the rest of the budget for the next year. So I just asked, and it was $1,000 for each one of them. There's 14, and so, I mean, you know, if we get less, then that's great, and we appreciate everything that we could get.
It's my understanding that you could have carried this somewhere in your budget.
The intergovernmental agreement does give, in the general budget, $155,000. It's not anything that I have to do. It does help with the cities. It helps them immensely. I have to do all their digest. I have to do all their, I do everything for them. So they don't have to do anything. They come to me and ask me for everything that they need. So when it comes to their audits, we do their audits. And I mean, I do a lot personally for that money. So I was just, you know, trying to get my employees a little something extra, because they do work hard and they are not up to a pay scale that they should be. One of my employees one time went to the landfill because she was going to be making more money, and she does not have to know titles. She doesn't have to deal with customers. I mean, there's so much that, I mean, she went to a job that you have to be less qualified for to make more money, and I never saw where that was fair. So that's just something I felt like has never, you know, it's always been for first responders. I agree that first responders need this too, but there's a certain departments don't ever get considered in any of this. And in my 10 years in office, any of the other departments have never been, or 11 years in office, none of the other departments have ever gotten a raise like they should have. And this was just something I was trying to give to my employees, something that I possibly could do because I do have the authority to do it.
So your staff is involved in work.
They do what?
Your staff does work under this intergovernmental agreement. Your staff does work with these cities. That's what.
They do the collections, yes. I mean, we do a lot for the state. The state has put more on us in the last year since we've been on drives. I mean, it's just enormous, and we're fixing to start scanning titles and keeping titles in our office. We're responsible to make sure that they're done. They no longer go to the state don't review these titles. They're putting everything off on us. So we're fixing to be doing a lot more, and it's going to make the lines longer because our scanning is going to take longer to do. We don't know how much longer. You know, it may be 5 minutes per title more. But they don't ever get anything for it. So I'm just trying to compensate them for doing more work, you know, and this is a way that I possibly could do it.
And if I could ask a follow-up question, the Commissioner, I think, Boyd had asked, when he said technically you could have varied this, and I think what he's doing, I'll ask the question myself. Essentially, you could have left it in postage, or you could have left it in a line item that you had been doing, and not been forthcoming exactly what you wanted to do with it.
Right.
By state statute or state law, you technically, as a constitutional officer, would have had the power within your own budget once we approved it. So the reality is, you were forthcoming up front with exactly what you wanted to do with it, but you could have left it in postage, you could have left it there, had we agreed to give it in that manner, and then later on down the road, you could have given it as a bonus, and it technically would have been out of our hands regardless. Would that be an accurate statement?
It is. And I've also given as much as $50,000 plus back to the county. Of course, that was including the intergovernmental agreement, so they've basically got all this money back every year. But then this year, when Alicia read it, it did say that it goes to the county commissioners. It does not go to me. So I said, you know, I understand. I can't say. I was just told when I came into office that it would be $1 in my budget. And that's the way it's always been done. It's always been added.
So, if I can ask a question, so during your 10, 11 years in office, this money that we're talking about, it has routinely, consistently been in your budget?
Yes, I've always put it in, and I've always give it back to the county. And this year I decided that I would try to help the girls in my office because they don't get paid what they deserve.
Well, personally, I appreciate your honesty in disclosing
Right.
that.
And you know, I could have just asked for it. Of course, I wouldn't have gotten it. I understand that because Alicia found out that I couldn't. But that was what my intentions were to be honest. Instead of doing two steps, I'd just go ahead and put it in to salaries instead of putting it in another line item and moving it.
So can we make clear that the government agreement actually requires us to give $1? She gets $1 and the county gets $8. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I don't want it to sound like we're taking something because we're not. We all went in our agreement as a county government. Okay, now I can't speak for commissions or past whatever, but I can speak from my office right now. Just to make sure we're clear. We have honored the agreement. And I don't want anybody to think that we haven't honored the agreement, but we have honored the agreement. So it is our job to look at the budget, to look at it as close as possible. And the more and more we become familiar with the budget and the process, we get better at doing it. So I guess this year, we got a little better at doing it. Thank you, Alicia. And so we didn't catch this and realize that was the question that came up. You can't give 14 employees a certain amount as a bonus, and then you have other employees that don't get a bonus. For Commissioner Clinton, it was about being fair. Simple as that. Now, the other offices that you talk about, when we give them their budget, we don't take care of their employees. They take care of their employees. But we take care of these employees. So there is a difference. It's not just the sheriff does what he wants to do, other officers do what they want to do, but they take care of their employees. Okay? But my understanding is when the payroll takes place every 2 weeks or whatever, we take care of this. And so since we take care of it, as a commissioner, I felt like it would be irresponsible for us to not take care of everyone in the same way. So I don't want it to sound like we don't honor honor the agreement we have under the agreement.
I guess I'm confused now, because if we've honored the agreement and we haven't taken that money away, but the practice has been going on for 11 years and now it's changed, how can we say we're not taking the money away?
Because we're talking about a gentleman's agreement a long time ago.
So we have
That's what
taken,
you're talking about. So what I'm talking about is I want to honor the government contract that we have. That's what we're doing.
The agreement is $1 goes specifically to the tax commissioner herself. The other $8 goes to the Carroll County budget. And for as many years as I've been on board, we have given all county employees a bonus when there are funds available. So I would agree that we've been fair to all employees with that. But the agreement does not specifically say a bonus. It says the money goes to Carroll County. And then going forward, we can clarify where that $8 goes for the next budget. Or you can decide now, this is how you want to do it this year. We will still have to renegotiate a new budget, a new agreement, November, December. How that one looks, I don't know. Whether it's the same as what you're doing now, or what you're going to do later, or what you don't do now. So, here, you're correct in that for as many years, the agreement has been the tax commissioner gets $1 herself. The $8 goes to the Carroll County budget.
and in practice, some of that $8 ended up in the tax commissioner's budget for 11 years.
It offsets the expense of the bill. So if we didn't have the cities, and we still would have our own bill, and it would still cost a certain set of money. By having the cities contribute, it offsets the bill.
Do you have to do this agreement?
No.
So you actually don't have to bring $8 in every year, $8.
Or the dollar she receives
But you
too.
don't have to do that.
And the dollar that I get is not as important to me as it is in what all of that covers. Because when somebody calls for taxes, they don't have to go to another city and get their taxes. They do the city of Bremen, they do the city of Mount Zion. But they can call my office and they can get all of the cities for that parcel. Where if I did not, they would have to, tax services, mortgage companies, attorneys' offices, anybody that's doing a closing is going to have to get it from my office, and they're going to have to get it from another office too. So it is in tax services when they pay taxes. So everybody, it's a one-stop shop. It benefits everybody. So that's why I do it. I don't do it for me and $1 per parcel, because that's not why I was elected. But it would take $155,000 away from the county if I did not do it.
Any other further questions from Ms. Beard? Any other discussion? Okay, so make sure I have the amendment correct. There is a motion and a second for an amendment to increase the tax commissioner's budget by $10,000, decreasing the commissioner's temporary labor from $8,000 to $4,000, decreasing the tax assessor's office supply line by $2,000, and decreasing the contingency line from $13,800 to $4,000.
No, ma'am, I'll be utilizing 4,000 of that 13,000.
It would decrease that $13,800 by $4,000. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. If there's not any further discussion, I will ask for a vote specifically on this item. And there again, to remind you to be verbal and raise your hand. So all those in favor, say aye and raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay, so that motion passes. And so it will, let me back up, I might need some help, Stacy.
I think now we need to vote on the budget resolution as amended.
As amended, okay. So the consideration of the resolution that I read earlier, with the amendment to increase the tax commissioner's office by $10,000, decrease the commission's temporary labor line that was $8,000 to $4,000, to decrease the tax assessor's office supplies down by $2,000, and to decrease the contingency line by $4,000. Is that correct? Okay, so I had a motion, didn't I?
You need a motion in a second.
Okay, so I need a motion and a second on this particular item. So Commissioner Lee is the first motion, and Commissioner Chance is the second motion to approve. No, excuse me, to make the motion, first and second. Okay, did we get that right? Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on to, oh, excuse me, in case y'all didn't see, it was 5 that were for and 2 were against. Now we will go to 8.3, FY 2021 Liability and Risk Management Insurance Proposal. A consideration of the FY 2021 Liability and Risk Management Insurance Proposal. Newton Jennings is here. If y'all have an, well, I guess I need to ask for a motion in a second first. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Chambers is a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Okay, McClendon is a second to approve this. Is there any discussion? And Newton Jennings is here. Do we have any questions for him?
I was just somewhat, do I need to move this thing? Maybe so. I was just somewhat baffled at our work session in that I guess I was surprised with this insurance proposal. To me, this is an $800,000 annually renewable contract for which we had no comparative information. And to me, I mean, we sat here for what, 30 minutes and battled back and forth about $14,000 or really $10,000, no addition to the budget. It's just changing some money around. But we have a $800,000 annually renewable contract that has gone up right at $100,000 from last year, and we have no comparative information. To me, that's just stunning. I can't believe I'm sitting here hearing that. So I guess I don't know. I'm here to safeguard the taxpayers' money, and I feel like I don't know in this situation. There's no possible way for me to know or us to know if I'm safeguarding the taxpayers' money or not, because I don't know if we can get the same product, service, for $5,000 less or $50,000 less or $150,000 less. I have no idea. And I asked the question during the work session if we got any, there's any periodicity to the annual renewable contract in that, do we get any competitive bids every 3 years or 4 years or whatever? What I heard was 2 or 3 years ago we got competitive bids. I did look into it some, and I found that yes, about 2017, 2018, we did get a comparison bid, and from the information I was given, that bid ended up saving the county $135,500. So I'm sitting here now saying, can you save us $135,000 from your original proposal? Because last time when we got a competitive bid, it saved the county $135,000 plus dollars. So I'm really annoyed at having no information, expecting to approve an $800,000 annually renewable contract. So it's been going on annually for I don't know how many years J. Smith Laniers had the contract, and you may have the best price and we couldn't find it a penny less, but we might find it $100,000 and some less. We did last time. So I am for saying, let's definitely put something in place, and this was brought up last time, that we would put an RFP process in place so that periodically, and I don't think annually is the thing, that's too often, but every 3 years maybe, we get a bid on this, it just keeps everyone honest. And right now, quite frankly, there's no mechanism in place to keep anyone honest. And there's no mechanism for any of us to use that shows that we're not blowing $100,000 plus of the taxpayers' money, simply because we have $800,000 and we just swallow it hook, line, and sinker and pay the bill. And I can't sit here and do that. If it was me, I wouldn't renew the contract. I'd say let's scramble and get a competitive bid in 3 weeks and see what we get. I can't, this is ludicrous to me, ludicrous. So I'm for developing an RFP process, and from what I hear also, the RFP process has to be tight in that there are ways that, quite frankly, an insurance broker can manipulate the system and block insurance carriers from being able to propose. So in other words, if a competitive broker wants to get a bid from ABC Insurance Company, the incumbent broker can send in false proposals and block that opportunity. So we're going to have to, if we develop an RFP process to safeguard the taxpayers' money, we're going to have to ensure that that doesn't happen, and that there is an open sealed bid process. Because last time, what I hear, it was not a sealed bid process, and a competitive bid came in, and quite frankly, I'm for transparency, and I'll just tell the public like it is from what I've heard. If it's not true, somebody tell me. But somehow that competitive bid was leaked, and the incumbent insurer was able to reduce their premium by a little bit more than the alternative bid. So we ended up staying with the incumbent insurer, and that's not right either. So I'm just saying, let's get a process in place. To me, this is absolutely ludicrous that we haven't had a process in place yet, where we have a very tight, foolproof, safeguard mechanism that we can ensure the taxpayers of this county that we're not taking in $800,000 of their money and just blowing it. That's my comment. I'm just baffled by this. This is the hardest thing really that's hit me since I've become a commissioner. It's like $800,000 a year, and we sit here for how many minutes and discuss $10,000. Well, what are we doing? I don't get it. But we need to develop an RFP process that's tight and safeguards taxpayers' money.
Not this year. Not this year. I don't believe there was one. I think it was 3 years ago. Am I correct? When the last one was done that we signed?
That sounds right, Madam Chair. I was not directly involved in the process then, but I believe that's correct.
For this year, I would like to bring up, and Commissioner Chance asked you this, and I asked another question. I mean, for loyalty purposes, I mean, here we're presented with a bill, no comparative information. We asked the question, do we get any discount for loyalty of staying with you guys for what, now how many years have we been your consistent annual customer, dishing out the funds to you? And the answer was no loyalty discount. Secondly, I asked COVID discounts, because insurance companies here, there, and everywhere are giving discounts to people, at least on personal lines, because travel has been less and so on and so forth. For a couple months, we've had cuts in our automobile insurance, and after many minutes of explanation, of which I really didn't get any answer, I concluded that there was no discount there either. So, I mean, what I'm seeing is an insurance carrier that says, here, county, here's your bill, and I know we're going to get paid because there isn't any comparison information, don't expect to ever get one, and I don't know if we've got a good price or not. And I ask about any type of discounts, and Commissioner Chance asked about any type of discounts, and no, we're not going to give you any discount. So it's like a monopoly on our liability insurance coverage to the tune of nearly $1 million a year. I mean, that's pretty good business. Not for the taxpayer, but for the insurer. So that's where I'm at.
Well, I'd like to say, based off Commissioner Reynolds' comments, first of all, Mr. Jim seems like a nice gentleman, and I've enjoyed getting to talk with you in the last meeting. And so I think just as far as where I'm at on this, hopefully moving forward, and it's certainly no reflection on Jason neither, but I think moving forward, we should, as Commissioner Reynolds is bringing up, we probably should have some kind of policy that we look at, that, we safeguards the county, if you will, maybe we can let the chairman probably try to work on something like that, or give us a recommendation, whether it's every 3 years, Commissioner is mentioning, or 2 years, or 4 years, or whatever that may be, just so that there's some kind of procedural policy in place that helps us keep ourselves on track, if you will. And Commissioner Reynolds' point, you may be the cheapest by $50,000, but obviously there is no comparative data there. And so anyway, so I share some of the same sentiments that it would be good as a board just moving forward. And that's not necessarily your problem. I'm just saying in general, I'd like to see us hopefully try to fulfill it. Thank you, sir.
Bet.
I just think when anything goes up $100,000 from one year to the next, especially, we need to ask a lot of questions. So, and I'll ask one more time, is there any opportunity for a discount from any perspective?
Commissioner Reynolds, your points are very well taken. I just ask you to keep one thing in mind, the $800,000 invoice that comes along with insurance, it's insuring $104 million worth of property values, 385 vehicles, hundreds
I
of
know all that.
employees.
That's not the point. The point is, could we get this policy instead of for $794,000, could we get it for $694,000? And you and none of us commissioners know the answer because there's no comparative information. I don't know. So to me, that's not being prudent with our taxpayer money. That's saying, hey, we've done this, here's another $800,000, let's just hand it out. We've got plenty. And we don't. And I want to do better for the taxpayers. So, I know last time it was a little problematic getting an answer, but there is no discount, is that correct?
No, sir, we're
Okay.
thankful to have the number that we do. We're not at a point of negotiation with the
Okay.
carrier.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Okay, at this time, I'll ask all those in favor, raise your hand and speak away from vocal. Yes? Any opposed? Okay, we had 5 yeses to pass and 2 noes. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we're now moving to 9, the business session. Item 9.1 is appointments to the West Georgia Emergency Medical Service Council. We have 2 appointments to make. It has been recommended that we reappoint the City of Carrollton's Fire Chief Jimmy Bearden and West Georgia Ambulance Service Operations Director Shane Bell to the EMS Council. And their terms will expire June 30th, so it does begin with July 1st. Do I have a motion and a second for this? Okay, Commissioner Lee is a motion to approve. A second by Commissioner McClendon. At this time, I'll open it for discussion or any other nominations.
I just say I appreciate everybody's service on board, appreciate the service.
Okay, at this time, I will ask you, all those in favor, raise your hands with a verbal yes. Yes. Any opposed? Okay, that was unanimous with 7. Okay, before moving into the zoning session, I would like to read the policies and procedures governing the conduct of zoning hearings. The applicant or anyone speaking in favor of the application request shall be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present their request. Anyone opposed to the request shall also have a total of 10 10 minutes to present their opposition. If there are multiple speakers for or against an application, I ask you to be mindful of the others because it's only 10 minutes, not 10 minutes each person. Anyone speaking for or against the application shall be allowed a total of 5 minutes to speak in rebuttal. I'm now going to call on the county planner, Janet Hyde, for our zonings we have tonight.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. The first item that I have for you all tonight is a conditional use for a cell phone tower at 2939 Old Columbus Road. The owner of the property is Thomas Gwynn Yates. The applicant is AT&T. This is application C-20-05-01. It's land lot 251 of the 9th District, parcel 0510048. This is in Commission District 6. This property is approximately 47.42 acres. AT&T is proposing to install 9 antennas, 9 cables, 15 RRUs, 3 DC-9s on a proposed self-support tower, and install a 6-foot 8-inch by 6-foot 8-inch prefabricated walk-in cabinet with a diesel generator. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this application. Staff recommended approval. There was no opposition at the Planning Commission meeting. There is a representative from Providence Consulting here to present this case for AT&T.
Before she starts, who's my timer? Stacy, are you going to time? Okay. Commissioner Lee's going to time 10 minutes now, so.
I don't think I'll take up my 10 minutes. Hi, I'm Leslie Carroll. I'm here on behalf of AT&T. We've engaged into a lease with the landowner for a 10,000 square foot leased area. The leased area will be fenced in, and it will include a small shelter and the tower. The tower is a 250-foot self-support type. It will accommodate multiple users. This is actually part of a federally funded initiative to bring service to rural areas. We've met all the ordinance requirements, and I'll leave the rest of my time open for questions.
I have a question, and this is based on,
We need to do the 10 minutes, do questions later, so get the 10 minutes, thank you, Stacy, and then rebuttal, then questions to the applicant.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you for reminding us, it's been a while since we've done one of these. So, okay, so we have anyone else here that would like to speak in favor of this conditional use? Anyone else that would like to speak in favor?
I've just got a couple of questions. We have horrible service down in the Ticeville area. We have a main junction box that it rains in constantly. Will this bring in better service?
Okay, excuse me, okay, this is not time for questions.
Oh.
Are you speaking in favor of?
In favor, provided that, you know, we have better, you know, for better service.
So could you go ahead and state your name and address?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll start voting.
Yes, ma'am. Cherie Willis, 397 Ville Blackjack Road. Where they're proposing to put the tower. We're not even a third of a mile down the road. I'm all for it as long as we get good service. Our internet service down there is horrible. Anytime it rains, I don't know if this is in connection with it, that hopefully it will help our phone lines. We get staticky phone service. A lot of times our service down in that area is just completely cut out on our house phones. If there's fiber optic that's going to be pulled down through there, that would be amazing. If it's a multi-use tower, is it going to be multi-use for like AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, any other cell phone users that can put an antenna on your tower? How tall will your tower be, and can it connect with the other towers? I think that's pretty much all I have. Is it gonna bring, basically what we're worried about in our area is better internet service, because it really stinks down there. There's so many businesses down through there that need it, want it, is an understatement. There's a lot of elderly people that are having to cut their house phones off because they can't afford it. How is the ratio? Anything on that? Is it going to provide better quality cell phone service?
I'm going to let Ms. Knight Beers please come back and, if you don't mind, addressing her concerns, and maybe elaborate
Thank you.
a little bit more on the cell phone tower itself and what
for us
more
to hear.
services you're going to be providing to answer her, please.
Trying to be mindful.
No, you're good. So the tower will bring better cell phone service to the area, and the area that she talked about is within the service area. They will have to run a fiber line to the tower in order to get it to function. Fiber in the area will also enhance your landline services. As far as landline goes, that's about where I end. There are two separate divisions, and I don't work for the landline division. I work for the telecommunication side. So, however, I think you can voice those concerns, and they would provide. Oh, okay. But yes, our tower will bring better cell phone service and the fiber to your area.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Okay, at this time, we'll start the timer over. Is there anyone here to speak against?
And not against, for.
Okay, well, we have a few more minutes on the agenda. Okay, so yes, you can still come forward. We still have 5 minutes, I'm sorry. So if you'll state your name and address, and you are speaking in for.
Yes, I'm for.
Okay.
Yes, it's Anna Irvin. My address is 134 Mount Olive Road, Bowden, Georgia, and I'm actually on the other side of the mountain. So, yes, I want to say that it would be wonderful to have another tower down that way, because cell phone service is awful. It really is awful. I mean, there's spots down there that if you were to break down in a car, you would have to go to somebody's house and beg to be able to come in and use a phone to be able to have cell phone service. So yes, that would be great. My question is one thing is, I know that it'll be multiple vendors on the tower. It'll be AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, whoever. Will it also be 5G? Will it be 5G compatible? And will it have or dishes for the fixed wireless? Because the fixed wireless will fix a lot of the people's internet problems. Because fortunately, where I'm at, there is a fixed wireless tower, a tower that has a fixed wireless dish on it on my side of the mountain. On the other side of the mountain, if they had that, I know line of sight, the towers could connect and they would still be able to get fixed wireless on the other side. And even if they didn't run the fiber or the cable or whatever, which that is, I'm surprised if they're going to do that. I'm also an AT&T employee, but I am, the fixed wireless is awesome. That's how I work from home. That is how I work, is I'm able to work with fixed wireless from home, and the tower will solve that problem. So, that is, will it be a fixed wireless dish on it also? Not at this time. Well, that would be a good thing for them. I know that they can put them on in it. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we have to stick with our process, and because of the acoustics.
I'm sorry.
No, we need her to come back up and address the board.
Okay, okay, I'm sorry.
So Mrs. Knight, because we
Thank
can't
you.
hear, so.
There will not be the fixed wireless dish on there. Fiber will be ran because that's how we power the radios that energize the antennas. Have I forgotten something? 5G will probably not be deployed in this area. Let me look real quick. No, at this time, they're deploying 4 carriers. 4G.
4G?
Amen.
Is there anyone else who'd like to step forward to speak in favor of the cell phone tower? Speak in favor of it. Okay, we will now stop the clock again, and we'll start over with 10 minutes. Is there anyone who wants to come and speak against the cell phone tower? Or cell tower, excuse me. Anyone that wants to speak against it? I'll ask one more time, is there anyone here who wants to speak against the cell tower? All right, so do I need to go back to the 5 minutes since there's no one speaking against?
You're not required to, but you could just ask if she has anything else.
Okay, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, ma'am.
All right, so at this time, I'll need a motion and a second. All right, so that was
Thank you.
Commissioner Chambers and Commissioner McClendon. Is there any discussion or any questions, by the commissioners?
A question that I had on Commissioner Reynolds as brought up before, we were talking about several towers and making sure that as equipment was added and so forth from a capital standpoint. And I understand this body or you as the tax assessor's office, but when you talk about multiple carriers being able to have access to the tower, are you aware or do you have knowledge of the process that is in place so when you add equipment, is there a direct correlation when you send information to the tax assessor's office so that we're keeping up that, just like if we build a new barn or something that we have to get a building permit and kind of that?
So as a tower owner, they won't release the new tenant to put equipment on the tower until they have a building permit. So there are measures in place that there's no notice to proceed with construction until there's all these measures in place. Am I understanding the question?
You are. You are. You just need to take it about one step further. That is the trigger mechanism, and you don't know me, I'm Ben Skipper, Community Development Director. So
Okay.
when they come in and pull the additional, or even when they do minimum upgrades as far as electrical, they're adding additional cables, but not necessarily a new dish. So when they're doing a change out, they still pull a permit, and then that permit is then forwarded to the tax assessor's office. So that is the trigger for the tax assessor's office to then go reassess, is when the permit is issued.
But they have,
Well, yes, we know that in the beginning. That's all part of the permit, and that's on the assessed value on the building permit. So that's on the cost of construction on the permit side. But typically you only see one antenna, one owner, and then as the other multiple carriers come through, each one of them's a permit, and that's a new trigger for an assessment.
but the tax assessor always has no process to value that. They depend on the value.
Right. Now, what happens when it goes to that side of the hall, I don't know, but I just know we trigger that to them.
Okay. You're welcome.
Any other discussion? Okay, if not, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, say verbal and raise your hand. Aye. Okay, that passes unanimous. Thank you all for coming tonight, very much appreciate it. 10.2, zoning for Little Vine Church Road. We have a consideration. Oh, guess what? Sorry, Jan, I'm about to read your part.
That's okay. The next item I have is a rezoning on Little Vine Church Road. This is consideration of owner applicant Mike Lee's request for a rezoning from R2 to agriculture. This is land lot 13 of the 5th District, parcel 1730049. This is application Z-20-05-01. This property is located in Commission District 5. Mr. Lee came before you all back in December and had asked to rezone this property, and you all agreed to rezone this property to R2. And he has since sold 4 lots out of that original parcel, which was 80-something acres. The rezoning to R2 gave him the right to make 1 acre lots, I'm sorry. The 4 lots that he sold are all 2 acres. Since then, he has decided not to develop the remainder of the property, which is about 77 acres that are left. So he's asking to rezone this, or downzone it back to agriculture. Planning Commission recommended approval, staff is recommending approval. And there was no opposition at the Planning Commission meeting.
I've got a question for you, Janet. One quick question. He's still left, according to this, from what I can see, he's still left with that 77 acres with about 135 feet of road frontage. I mean, he has 135 feet of road frontage to get to that back 77 acres.
He has sold off those, or platted off those front 4 lots with considerable road frontage. He has a small, and I can't remember, I don't have the plat in front of me.
50 feet.
50 feet.
Oh, okay.
Road frontage there that he was maintaining for access to the back.
Okay.
Okay, so I see the applicant is here. Good to see you. You have 10 minutes.
Okay, I am here, and it's thanks to Janet, because at 6 o'clock she texted me and said, "Where are you at?" And I had forgot, so I apologize for being in shorts. I'm embarrassed that I've never been to a commission meeting so ill prepared. So thank you for, y'all have the best staff of any municipality I deal with, so thank you. Janet covered everything. The ultimate was to develop the whole property. There's several springs on the property and 2 creeks. It just did not work to do what we intended to do, and the staff worked with us to just do 2 acre lots, 4 parcels in the front, and we were able to salvage that part of it, and then we'll keep the rest for long-term personal use. So, and that's it.
Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor? Stop the clock, we'll start over. Is there anyone here that would like to speak against? Okay, hearing none, I will forgo the 5 minutes and rebuttal to both nay and yea. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion and a second, please.
Motion to approve.
Okay, so the motion to approve is with Commissioner Reynolds, and I think I saw Fuller's hand go first, Clint, so I'm going to let Commissioner Fuller be the second on that. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion at this time? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'm going to call for a vote, and I ask you again to raise your hands and be verbal. All those in favor? Yes. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
So at this time, I do not have any further business, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
McClendon,